Everybody, you probably know me. I'm Dr. Tola Porter, Assistant Director for Learning Engagement and Technology. And on behalf of our Executive Director and Chief Curator, Dr. Jill Dupy, and the entire LOE team, welcome. We're so glad you're here tonight. I want to thank some of our sponsors for tonight's program, including and most importantly, the Arnold and Augusta Newman Foundation, whose generous endowment has allowed the LOE to bring incredible artists to the University of Miami's campus, to engage our wonderful members and public audiences, as well as to meet directly with students in the Department of Art and Art History, thanks to the chair of the department, Nathan Timpano, and the assistant professor of photography, Claudio Nolasco, who's here tonight. Hello. Thank you, Claudio. It's because of Claudio's deep knowledge in the field of photography that we can access incredible artists like Elinor. Okay, so other sponsors, let's just say their names so they know we love them, which we really do. Miami-Dade Department of Cultural Affairs, the City of Coral Gables, Beaux-Arts Miami, and the LOE Advisory Council. Okay, let me please introduce our incredible speaker tonight, and then we can hand the mic over to her. But let's listen a little bit about Elinor. Elinor Carucci is an Israeli-American fine art photographer of Jewish, North African, and Bukharian descent. She earned a degree in photography from the Bezalel Academy of Arts and Design in 1995 and moved immediately to New York City. From 1993 to 2006, she also worked as a professional Middle Eastern dancer, and I think we'll get to see some images of that. Her work has been exhibited worldwide in both solo and group exhibitions. Her images have been featured in major international publications and are held in the permanent collections of institutions such as the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, the Jewish Museum, also New York Brooklyn Museum. Carucci has received numerous prestigious awards, including the ICP Infinity Award, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and a New York Foundation for the Arts Fellowship. She's published 5 monographs: Closer, Diary the Dancer, Mother, Midlife, and most recently, The Callers of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She teaches in the graduate program of photography at the School of Visual Arts and at Hunter College Art Department, and is represented by Edwin Hook Gallery. So with no further ado, I give you Elinor Carucci.
Thank you so much, Noah. Thank you for everything. Thank you, Claudia. Thanks to you, I'm here. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. So, I'm going to show all the body's work. I have a lot of images, but I'm promising to keep it in a decent time because there's so much I want to show you and share. I was born in Jerusalem to a family, as Tola was saying, of a Moroccan and Bukhari descent. And my mom was, everything is, I can talk about my mom for 2 hours. Everything starts from my mom. And she's the reason I became a photographer. She was kind of a Jewish tiger mom, if you can imagine something like that. And even though we come from, I'm the first person in my family to go to college, and we come from a Middle Eastern background, she really pushed me to go to the museums and study classical piano and do very well. And she was also beautiful and glamorous and strict and difficult and wonderful. And it was difficult to deal with her. I studied classical music for 13 years and drama and theater, but I wasn't really good in any of those. Until one day in 1986, a long time ago, I picked up the camera, my father's camera. My father is a taxi driver, he's not in the arts, but he was taking pictures as a hobby. And I started photographing my mom. And it changed the way I could deal with my mom. And this is the reason why I became a photographer. There was suddenly so much more I saw in my mom. This is the first picture I took when I was 15 years old. She woke up from an afternoon nap. And I started photographing my mom and accepting the fact and not even accepting, enjoying the fact that she's beautiful and glamorous and difficult and dramatic and a diva. Everything became material for my work, not something I had to deal with. And she was very open to me because she's a typical Jewish mama. So the kids, everything her kids are doing they're geniuses, and we have to write this kind of. And I said, if I can connect and see so much more and feel so much more and understand so much more of my mom with my camera, this is who I want to be. I want to be a photographer. And I continue to photograph my mom. And I still do. It's different today, but I still do. Just a few of my first inspirations. So these are the two posters that I bought when I was a teenager, Eugene Smith and Ralph Gibson. Only years later, I realized that they were photographing their loved ones. Eugene Smith, his children, and Ralph Gibson. This is Mary Ellen Mark, and they were together at the time. This is Mary Ellen Mark's work. Emmett Gowan in the middle, Sally Mann, and Ann Golden. I won't get into each of them, but these were my first inspirations in Jerusalem while I was studying photography in an after-school program. Then I did the Israeli army, sensitive topic today, but it was really good for me because it toughened me out. And then I did my degree and moved to New York. And this is my first body of work closer. I was still photographing my mom, and this is me in my 20s. It's a kind of a coming of age body of work, photographing my mom a lot, and myself and the rest of the family. And I realized at some point, especially after sharing the work and showing the work, that even though I'm photographing my own mom and my body and my grandma and my aunt, I am photographing womanhood. The work comes from the microcosm in my family, from the deepest, most intimate parts of my life, but it talks about being a woman, relationships, the body, love, jealousy, connection, and everything that exists. I think everything exists in the family. And then I also realized not everyone will open up to me the same way my mom did. It was different with my dad. He was more introverted, and with my brother. But I continued to expand and photographed also my husband, then my boyfriend, who I met in art school in Iran. And he comes from a family of photographers. His grandparents were professional photographers, and he had a lot of gear. First of all, to our third date, he brought me his grandma's darkroom, and he was always willing to be photographed naked. So I said, I found my husband. This is the man. And we're still together, raising our twins in Chelsea, Manhattan. I showed you the photographers that were inspiring to me, but I'm also really inspired by stand-up comedy. Wanda Sachs is one of my inspiration, especially for my body of work that I'm going to show later, Midlife. Dave Chappelle, Barbara Cho. But my work is usually more theatrical. I take everyday moments and try to elevate them to dramatic theatrical moments, kind of creating what I call the photography stage. But this was a funny moment. My mom was talking about what men want and how stupid they can be. She has those moments. And I managed to, because I always have the camera on a tripod, to capture a funny picture that I'm very proud of. So this is closer, and I'll move on because I have a lot to show. So I've been a professional belly dancer for over a decade, and this is my second book that I published about 2.5 years of this time, and it's my unsuccessful book. I'm like a rock band. My second album is unsuccessful. I don't know why it didn't do as well. I mean, it was launched with a portfolio in the New York Times magazine, but people didn't relate to it as they do to my other body's work. I don't think it's as universal in its themes. It was a very specific story about a Middle Eastern dancer in a world most people, even though it's in New York City, most people don't know I danced to a lot of immigrant communities, people like Israelis, Arabic communities, Chinese, Turkish, people from Cyprus, many immigrant communities, but it didn't do as well, but this is still my body of work and the journey that I try to show. Being a belly dancer, the end of the evening, the tips, and little and big moments. Let's see if this is running. It's not running, or a little bit. So this is just from back in the days. I think this is 20-something years ago. And I was performing 4 or 5 nights a week. It was not easy to photograph it because I had to many times hide in the bathroom because I was the surprise of the evening and hiding the camera, and sometimes my husband came with me. Anyway, this is a little bit of an Indian wedding. Thank you. In 2003, I get pregnant with twins, and of course, I thought I'm continuing, and I did, to photograph the pregnancy, and I started being pregnant, but in many ways, I feel that the beginning of this work is the end of Closer. I would edit the books differently, because I changed so much when I became a mother. And this is still before. I was here, so I was induced and eventually had an emergency C-section, and I was in the hospital, and I was like, I was having contraction, and I was very emotional. And also I discovered this medical light above me, and I was like, this is a great light. So I was taking this picture, with a tripod, and I have the IV in my hand, and the nurse was like, Miss Carucci, you're a high-risk delivery, can you put those things down? We need to focus on, and I don't know what got to me, and I started to talk to the nurse, and I was like, you don't understand, we lose all the time. I was like, hormones and the medication, and I was like, we lose people and places and moments, because I didn't know that I'm going to lose the woman that I am, and in a few hours I will be a mother of 2. And I got like so philosophical, and I was like, we all take pictures, professional or not, because we want to keep and not lose, which is true, but she was like, Miss Carucci, I really don't care about this right now. And this was the last picture I took. I was like, one more frame. And then I was rushed to an emergency C-section, and I gave birth to twins, and I became a mother of 2. And it was a very difficult time, like for many women, and sometimes the men too. It's a difficult time, it's very demanding, but also I suddenly was very angry as an artist about the lack of representation of what motherhood is. What it's not only, so this is my Madonna and Child. It's a beautiful minute, even though here you can see my painkillers, and we have a Madonna and Child here on the wall, and another Madonna and Child there, and I felt I was in a lot of pain, and it was very overwhelming, and my body was lost, and I just felt all I've seen all my life, and this is also 21 years ago, was Madonna and Child pictures, or sculptures, or photographs, mainly done by men, which is great. I love men. You do the 50% of the work in museum walls, and we'll do the other 50%, that is what is really motherhood is. My new body that I didn't like, and the sleepless night, and the uneven breast, and the uneven brain. I wanted to photograph all of it. I was really determined. I was like, I want to create a body of work that will show everything, the highs and the lows, the beautiful and the terrible. And it is it is still. My daughter is very upset when I'm saying it. She's like, Mom, this is so not feminist. When I'm saying that they are the most beautiful thing that happened to me. She's saying it's not feminist, and I'm telling her it's very feminist. And it's not the only way to be a feminist, but it's one of them. Also, photographing children. Is it okay that I photograph them? Is it okay to take a picture, even though it's one frame? I became the fastest photographer in the world. And then we had a lot of conversations as they were growing up about being photographed and about who their mother is. I always tell them, it's a selfish act, which my daughter also argues with me. She argues with me about anything, with everything. She's a daughter. But I do tell them, I do it for me, and I hate to hold facades. I want to share the realities with everyone. And before I was looking for the dramas in the everyday, but when you have kids, every day is a drama. So here she told me she hated me because I cut her bangs. And this is bath for my son that got dramatic. And I wanted to talk about, so inspiration started with photographers, stand-up comedians. Now I was going to the parks, to the playground with a notebook and talking to the mothers, neglecting the kids. And I remember also talking about the fact that we don't need our husbands physically as much in those early years. And I remember one woman told me, tell your husband to wait, you'll be back to him when the kids are older. But I wanted to talk about this sensual connection to the children, something that is a little bit of a taboo, but is such a big part of motherhood. And about the body and the female body and what it is for our children. I grew up seeing my family naked. They didn't live their lives naked, and it was also more common back then in Israel, especially in Mizrahi Jews, among the women. I always saw my mom and my grandma and my aunts naked, and for me it was a good thing to see real bodies. And when I hit menopause and middle age, I remembered my grandma's naked body, and it comforted me. I'm like, oh, this is just parts of grandma that I saw when I was 5 years old. And this is something my son did. I didn't, he then told me later, Mom, I didn't know that was inappropriate. And I was like, and then it's okay. You're picking into the underwear, you're curious, it's fine. And this is an image I edited out of Mother, and I just recently discovered it. And what I thought about it is, I know I was talking about the fact that it was hard, but it was so much about functioning that I missed some of the beautiful moments. Now my kids are 21 and in college, and I would give everything to have those crazy mornings and the snot and the tears and them sitting in my lap. So I edited back in. Midlife. Midlife happened out of a midlife crisis. I was a little lost. I had some medical problems, and eventually I had a hysterectomy. And my kids were growing older. They finished elementary school, and I felt I was lost. I was photographing my own blood and making blood paintings, and I was like, what's going over me? I bought a new lens and did close-ups of the body. But at some point I realized that I wasn't as lost as I thought. I was actually photographing for the 2 years until I discovered it, and then 5 more years, my middle-age years. And I was like, it was a revelation, you say? Thank you. And once I realized that those close-ups and the 3 generations, it wasn't me being lost, it was me actually. And I always tell my students, it's good to be lost because then we're looking and we're searching. I became committed to, I was like, I'm doing a project about midlife. How exciting. Because in many ways, I do feel it's the prime of my life. I'm smarter than before, laughing more, loving more, feeling more. And there is a lot of beauty, but a lot of challenges in this age, like my mustache and beard, that I wanted to photograph. Van Gogh, as I said, because I was lost, I was looking at a lot of art. And it was a good thing for me. And those new close-ups of my skin. Agnes Martin, who I think I have it in the editorial section, I photographed a year, I think, before she died, and was very influenced by her work, even though it's, as she called it, emotional minimalism. I don't know if she would approve my pubic gray and brown hair with her paintings, but this is my interpretation. And my blood paintings that I did as a part of Midlife. Louise Bourgeois and her work was a big inspiration. I never actually knew until I dived into Midlife that the spider was representing her mother. And so there's so much work about her mother and about her father, but mainly about her mother. I wanted to photograph the three generations and be in the middle generation between younger kids and older parents. This is my mom and my daughter, and my father and my son. And the kids that are growing older, which was very difficult for me. It was hard for me to let them go. And I posted the left picture, it's me and my son. I was stupid enough to post it on Instagram, and I wrote, "Is it still okay to hug my son naked now that he's 15? And one of the comments were like, "No," and I'm calling child services. I also wanted to highlight middle age and relationships and marriage over time. We always in our society look down at people being married for many years, paying the mortgage, paying the bills, raising kids in many ways, and as something boring, and it's not necessarily. There are a lot of burdens and responsibilities, but there is a lot of beauty in those many years of knowing each other, the trust, the friendship. We knew each other's bodies. Now we're in our mid-50s since we're 21. And the connection, we had our bad and good times, and we saw each other's worst and best sides, but there is so much beauty in it, the way it is, without making this stupid date night and all that, trying to feel like you're 25. We're who we are, and our date night, might be in the laundry room in the basement. So, this is my uterus. I came to the hospital with my gear, even though I was in a very difficult time with hysterectomy. It had a big effect on me, more emotionally than physically. But it ended up being such a crazy moment because I came with the gear, the flashes, my strobes, and my surgeon said, "I'll keep the uterus for you. Before you go home, you can photograph it." But then the hospital heard about it, and they didn't want me to do it. So after 3-hour general anesthesia, my husband, he put out the lights because they were fighting. Someone from the hospital was fighting with my doctor. So he woke me up, he's like in my face, and he's like, "You have to wake up now. They're taking your uterus away." So I woke up, I was like, aperture 5-6, first strobe, and I'm like, anyway, and she's running to me, she's up, and my gynecologist came. It was this was my stand-up comedy moment there, with the camera on the uterus, and I took a few pictures, and I have it. It was not hard, it was not easy to see it, but it's my starry night, and it's probably only mine in terms of starry night, but I love Van Gogh, and he was an inspiration, this work, for me. body of work ended up being, so I was like, this is a body of work about midlife. I've never seen a photo body of work about middle age, and I was like so happy until I started to try to find a publisher to publish the work. And of course, no one wanted to publish this work. It's a work about a woman being middle-aged. I mean, it's becoming a little bit more trendy right now, menopause, and I'm very happy with celebrities like Naomi Watts and Gwyneth Paltrow. So I'm happy menopause is like making an appearance and is the cool maybe now, I don't know. But for me, it was very difficult then, and the more difficult it was, the more I became determined. I was like, I'm going to publish this body of work, and I tried, and eventually the editor who published my first book, Closer, Alan Rapp, God bless him, published the work with Monticelli Friedman today, and it did so well. It was very, very gratifying experience. So many women, young women also, and middle-aged and older, bought the work. It was featured in the New Yorker and Wired and the Guardian, and I was like, you see, middle-aged is interesting. And so it was successful, and also kind of I realized that it was in a way more of an activism, like more political than I ever meant to be. I was suddenly talking about women's rights and women's health and equality in the workplace, and it was empowering in many, many ways and very important. I'm proud of this work, and I'm still middle-aged, which I didn't realize. I have a few more years, so I continue to photograph midlife. Maybe I'll publish Midlife, the sequence. Empty nesters, other elements that come with middle age, Botox. Can talk about it more after. I'm still a feminist. Don't lose hope on me. Talking about, how getting work and being treated equally in the workplace, if you let your hair go gray, or different things that can affect your income, that shouldn't affect your income. And some self-portraits alone in a hotel room after the kids are older, who we are as women. So there is a lot, and thank you for the hotel room, Claudia, because I'm making self-portraits now. So this is a residency actually with my parents divorced, so I'm photographing as much as I can because they're in Israel. Their new relationship. I wanted to talk also about my editorial work. So I've been working for magazines since '98, and it's something that's now really a big part of what I do, and parallel in many ways in its themes to what I do with my own work. Photographing women, photographing intimacy, families, aging. I started with this, so I was very nervous, and I can talk about it more when I'm in Claudia's class to the students, getting over the fear. I was very nervous. I was mainly making a living as a belly dancer to shoot for magazines. I was just imagining, before we had the Devil Wears Prada, I was like, I don't know, photo editors and models, and it was very scary. So for at first I just said no to the assignment. I was like, this is so scary because I know I take many bad and mediocre pictures in order to get the good ones. And I was like, what if I have 1 hour, 1 day, and I won't be able to make good work, which is possible. But eventually I said, just as I came to New York, I have to jump to the water, and it can also be an income and all that, I have to do it. So this was my first assignment in 1998 for Big Magazine, who wanted me to shoot a fashion story, but I convinced them, out of fear, because I was nervous, to photograph the body as a space for fashion. And they loved it. As an artist, I was like, this is my creative integrity, and but I was just scared of working with the whole, which I now do. I got over it. I got another campaign also I was photographing at home, photographing my friends, and then I get this job to photograph Agnes Martin, to go to New Mexico, to Taos, what I just told you about Claudio. That's when I realized how beautiful it is there. And it was such an amazing experience that I would have never got had I not taken this assignment. To meet Agnes, to hear her, to also bring my work to connect to another person, to try to show intimacy and intensity and emotional elements in someone that I don't know. It's not my family. And I felt this is like going back to school. It's pushing me out of my comfort zone, and this is really, I have to do it. And then I started getting a lot of work. And I was picked up by Art and Commerce, which were like blue chip agency. They represented Stephen Meisel and Annie Leibovitz, and I was like, yeah, I'm good. I'm successful. But they obviously wanted me to do fashion, celebrities, to make money. And so I don't want to do fashion. I don't like this world. I was talking to the models about their grandmas, and they were showing me little imperfections in their bodies that and my agent was like, this is not where we want. And so eventually the agency dropped me, and I was very sad. And this was one of the last shoots I did for them. This is Dave Grohl, so a celebrity. But so after they dropped me, and they dropped a third of their roster because they were bought by IMG, so it was also, anyway, I was like, I cried for 3 weeks, but then I was looking at my work, and I thought, I can do, even though it's a celebrity and it's Dave Grohl, I can do this. I can photograph connection, I can photograph family, and this is what I should do. I shouldn't try to do fashion because I'm not great at it. I should try to do celebrities because I don't know how to put up the show. And this is what I've been doing, this is John Legend, since I became the sensitive photographer. And they're sending me to postpartum stories, to many stories where you need a sensitive, gentle person. And this is a story about a child who was diagnosed as pre-psychotic. And each of those I can give a lecture about for 1 hour. But I'm not gonna do it. This was for People magazine, a teenager who was extremely violent, autistic, and her mother tried to kill her and commit suicide. I photographed the family, very intense day, and then New York Magazine sent me to jail to photograph the mother. So these are the kind of stories that I do, and I love them. I love photographing people, and I'm grateful that people are opening up to me. Complicated story. And I'm glad in many ways with the kind of stories that I do. So this is Evan, he's a transgender man. And since I switched to digital, there's some very ambiguous moment when people are not sure they want to be photographed. I can always share the work with them, and if they don't like it, I can delete it on the spot, on the camera. So this is what we did here. Evan wasn't sure he wants to be photographed breastfeeding. I told him, let's take 1 or 2 pictures. I showed it to him. We deleted those, we changed the location, and he loved the next ones and approved them. And this became so what started to happen is that my editorial work started to get me a lot of attention. Also, it started to be exhibited. This became viral. It was shot for Kristen Rupani, short story Cat Person, and Elton John bought the print. It was exhibited in many places. It was great to be viral. I was like, this is so nice to get all this attention. This won an award, a woman who's raising her daughter in jail in a special program in Washington State. This is a portfolio. This was great to work on for the New Yorker about women who stopped dyeing their hair during COVID. Sorry. And teenagers during COVID, which were mainly kids I knew. Even my own kids are here, they're in the bottom left, and a lot of other friends that I knew since they were in elementary school, and of course there was a writer who interviewed them. I knew Toby because he went to school with them, and I remembered always in the horrific talent show you have to sit through when you're a parent for 3.5 hours. I remembered him playing the cello, and that it was my only savior. I was like, Toby will play the cello. So I asked him to play the cello, and I took pictures and started to cry. And I started to cry, and then my husband is taking the picture, and then it was like, Elinor. But I love Toby. So the two strokes are here, and Toby's playing. And some recent editorial stories, and I was just told that this recent story I shot for the New York Times Magazine will be this weekend cover. So I'll give you a little peek of it. It was already out in the digital. This was a story that was photographed in a secret location because this is a Russian general that deserted. I flew outside of America to photograph him and his family and couldn't show their faces. And this isn't just came out. I love her. And I'll end with my recent book. So for the first time, one of the editorial stories ended up as a body of work. A month after Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed, I was hired by Time to go to the Supreme Court and photograph her collars, which she was very famous for, and each of them has a story. And it was, I think, the first assignment that I got more because of who I am than I'm not a still life photographer. So when Catherine Pomerantz called me from Time, she was like, Elinor, I have an assignment for you. I'm not sure you would want to do it because it's a still life photography. And I was like, okay. And so she said, you'll have to go to it. It was during COVID, to Washington, D.C. She started telling me about it, and I'm like listening to her. And then she told me what it was. And I'm a big fan of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as many of us are. And I was like, still life? I photographed my uterus. I'm a still life photographer. And I got the job. But I think she didn't go to a classic still life photographer because she wanted a woman, a mother, maybe a Jewish woman. And so it was an incredible experience. We got 6 minutes per caller, so it was intense. The Supreme Court, me and my husband, 2 immigrants from Israel, and we got to listen. The writer was there with us to the stories, and then it was out. I also photographed some of the details and really tried to approach it as a portrait. And then it got so much attention. My gallery was exhibiting it in art fairs and selling prints, and people asked me, is there a book? Is there a book? And I was like, no. And eventually, the 25th person, I was like, yes, maybe there will be a book. So I published The Colors of RBG with Sarah Bader, no relation to Bader Ginsburg, and we worked on this book for 3 years. And got to even photograph some more colors from the time that Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sandra Day O'Connor, they together decided to wear the colors as a way to separate themselves from the male justices. And they started with the more traditional lace colors, but then with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, it really developed more. People started sending her colors, and she had the dissent color and the majority color. The law clerks commissioned for her. It's her husband's words that are engraved here. It's not sacrifice, it's family. Martin Ginsburg's words about moving to DC for his wife's career. And each of those family, so there was a lot of test and time invested into it. This was a gift for her. She was the first justice who married the same-sex couple, so this became the LGBTQ color. This is her favorite color, the famous one on the cover of the book. This one was done for her by the Metropolitan Opera. And each color has a long story. This is photographed in an Israeli museum in Tel Aviv, and this was commissioned by Columbia Law School, where she taught and was graduated at the top of her class for her 25 years at the Supreme Court. So this editorial assignment became a big project for me, and was exhibited in the Jewish Museum. It will be exhibited, the whole series, at the Jewish Museum here in Miami during the Miami Basel, and in many other places. And the book was out and did very well. So this was a blessing. And this will be the cover story of this weekend magazine. And in the past 10 years, I've been photographing my kids as they went through middle and high school and the 2 first years of college in a body of work I call Teen, that I intend to publish next in a book. It's them and 83 of their friends, so so this will be the next body of work, so stay tuned. Thank you.